Oh, yeah.
It is time for Daniel in the Deacon's Den. It is time for a conversation with Deacon Dan Brahier. Good morning, Deacon Dan. How are you this morning?
Good morning, Dave. Good morning, Ron. I'm doing great. Thank you.
You're all ready for Thanksgiving?
I am definitely ready for Thanksgiving. And somebody once told me that Thanksgiving is the greatest of the holidays because it is a no responsibility day. The only thing you have to do all day is cook a turkey, eat it, and watch football.
That's right, yeah.
You're right. That's good.
Really, what could be better than that?
No, I am with you. I want to talk about, now you wear many hats. Here in the Diocese of Toledo, though, you oversee the diaconate program. And people think about that. What are you involved in? Obviously, you're involved in the training of potential new deacons, but it doesn't stop there, right?
It does not. One of the things that is most important is to provide kind of the ongoing support for our deacons after they've been ordained. And I think, a lot of people just assume that you do a whole lot of front-end work, prepare them, and once they're ordained, you send them off and say, well, good luck, And nothing could be further from the truth. And when you think about it, that's true of any profession. As a teacher, after you get a degree in education, you get your teaching license and you go off, and that's just the beginning. You're going to have somebody looking after you. You're going to be doing ongoing professional development and constantly studying the craft and getting better at what you're doing. So a couple of years ago, the Council of Bishops released a new set of directives, it's called the National Directory. It's really like standards for preparing deacons for ordination, but also what to do post-ordination. And they laid some good guidelines in there that caused us to sort of rethink and redo some of the things that we're doing. We already had some opportunities available, a lot of good things, but we stepped it up a notch with the new standards. So one of the things is there is now, for our deacons, there is a 5-year post-ordination program. So, you spend 5 years, in the formation process before ordination, but then there's another 5 years after the process to make sure that we're bringing you into the fold and continuing with the growth, So we had our first experience of that this last weekend. The 13 men who were ordained on September 13th, fortuitously, this was scheduled exactly 10 weeks to the hour from their ordination.
Oh, wow.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
And so we met with them and their wives down in Glandorf at St. John the Baptist Parish. Fun place to visit. What a beautiful church that is. And so we met for the day there and spent time just being together. So they started the day with morning prayer, and they had a session on the spiritual identity of a deacon. And then we had Eucharistic adoration, a holy hour. We had lunch together, and then we broke the deacons and their wives up into separate sessions, and we had a sharing session with the kind of things that are going on, what ministries they're already involved with, their biggest challenges and surprises, that kind of thing. And then we pulled them all back together and did a big Q&A and kind of set the tone for the coming year. So it was just a beautiful, uplifting day and an opportunity for those men and their wives to get together, which, unfortunately, we get so busy in our jobs that we just don't do that enough,
Right.
And ministry is no different. You go off to your parish and start doing things, and unless somebody says, hey, you need to be in Glandorf on Saturday for the day, we're just not going to do that, So we'll actually do that annually with them for at least 3 years. And then the other thing is that all of the men who were ordained this year, of course, during formation, they had a spiritual director. And so we're asking them to continue with their director on a fairly like a monthly basis moving forward. And we also assigned to every one of the newly ordained a mentor deacon that they will, continue to connect with, and they'll connect at least quarterly. Although it's kind of funny because they're kind of the quote requirement is to meet with them quarterly. And I've already talked to some of the men and their deacon or their mentors who told me that even though it was supposed to be a quarterly deal, they've already met multiple times in the first quarter. Because that's kind of what it comes down to. And the idea is to, talk to somebody who's, even if you've only been in the field for 2 or 3 or 5 years, you learn a lot. The learning curve is steep. and it's somebody to sit with and say, hey, what do you do when this comes up in your parish, or how have you handled this or that? And then they will continue to do an annual retreat of at least 3 days. They'll do continuing formation, workshops, classes, and so forth, plus this annual meeting. So what we're really trying to do is to set them up for success, to make sure that there's plenty of follow-up after ordination. And that's kind of their plan moving forward for this group.
I've always been in awe of deacons because, number one, I mean, just that call that they answered, they're on a path, and they're always eager to learn more. At least that's what I've seen in them. And the fact that the formation process is so extensive that they're not unprepared for anything. They're ready to go, and I really am thankful for that yes that these deacons have given, and of course for your program in the Diocese of Toledo that's really forming these men for permanent diaconate.
There's a lot to learn, and again, I think the analogy to life as a teacher or any other kind of profession, you learn enough to be able to go out there and do what it is that you were asked to do, but it's inevitable that you're going to start running into things saying, I know I could be doing this better, or I wasn't even aware that this model was out there. An example would be for our current deacons. And that includes, of course, these men who were just ordained, but we set a kind of a goal or a project, if you will, for the year of homiletics and preaching, and trying to help deacons to prepare better homilies. Not that we're not doing a good job, but we can always do better. So at the convocation back in June in Findlay, we had a keynote on the kind of the art of preaching, and then we followed up with a full day back in October, where deacons came together, again, back in Findlay, with a professor who teaches homiletics down at the seminary in Cincinnati. Spent the day with them on kind of the finer points of planning, preaching, etc. And then beginning next week on Tuesday, we're going to do a 4-part virtual series with deacons that'll be just like 4 90-minute evenings where we're doing a book study of a relatively new book called The Art of Preaching. And we're going to read that book together, discuss it, look at some videos, analyze some homilies, and really dig deeply into how we prepare and deliver homilies. So it's really like a theme for the whole year. And that's kind of the idea, is to continue to look at what we do as deacons and say, we know we're doing this. Can we do it better? Can we do it differently? And it's kind of an interesting challenge in our office to continue to sort of monitor what are the needs of our deacons, what are our pastors saying, and how can we better serve that community and grow with them.
And Deacon Dan, you talk about within the diaconate program, you highlight the fact that they're encouraged to have a spiritual director. That's something that's required of them. Also, this idea of mentors. Now, people might be listening saying, I'm not in the diaconate program. How does this apply to me? But wouldn't you encourage everyone to at least definitely to have a spiritual director? But this idea of mentoring is something that is really catching fire in the church again as well. We need to walk with one another. We need encouragement from one another, and we need accountability with one another.
Agreed. I mean, look at in our secular world, the recent growth in this idea of a life coach, right? I mean, what is a life coach? It's somebody that people hire a person to be their life coach that they can meet with once every few weeks and talk about how their life is going and what opportunities they should be taking and what they should not. And the problem I have with life, and by the way, I'm not talking down to life coaches, but part of the potential problem there is that a life coach is not necessarily related to your faith.
Right.
And so if we're going to have a conversation with somebody about best choices to make in our lives, we ought to include God in that, and make sure that we're going deeply into the scripture that we're reading, the prayers that we're saying every day, and listening to God and making sure that we're following His will, because that's what that coaching is all about. And so I think it makes perfect sense to have that mentor that's walking right there with you that says, hey, I'm walking that walk too. Let's share it together, and let's listen to God together and see if we can figure out what path He wants you to walk down.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. Thank you very much, Deacon Dan. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving. We look forward to catching up with you again next week.
You too. Thank you so much. Blessed Thanksgiving.